Thank you, folks. One more round of applause. Please welcome the filmmakers, director Susanna Styron and producer Jacki Ochs. Thank you very much. Thank you both so much for this film and for being here with us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I'll start off with a few questions and then we'll open it to the audience. One of the things I had mentioned early on about the film is that it goes beyond migraine. It goes into in general, I feel, a chronic illness, and relates. I mean, it makes it something that's relatable to anyone who, I mean, on a disability level, as far as a disability film festival, our committee found this extremely relevant. Did you recognize that in the process and feel that this is not just for those suffering from migraine, but rather people who suffer in general from either chronic illness or just the struggles of disability?
Well, everybody experiences pain. And it's really important in any film that you make to be able to find what is universal about your subject matter. So we did, we did feel that this was relatable to, everyone in a way because everyone feels pain, everyone suffers in some way, and the other way in which we also felt it was relatable to more people than might realize is that people discover that all of these people they know have migraine and they never knew about it, or maybe that they have it themselves and they never knew about it. So yes, as we went along, I mean, we always wanted it to be about more than one specific disease and more about an aspect of kind of to bring it out into the human condition.
Yeah, and the other word I think that's key is invisibility. There are a lot of disabilities and there's a lot of illnesses and there's a lot of illnesses with chronic pain that are invisible to the people around you, and migraine is stigmatized to some degree because of that. So we definitely think that that's universal and applicable to a lot of different ailments and disabilities.
Absolutely. Very much connected to us. The invisible disability is often something, how can you show that, and we see the different approaches that happen with a person, if a person's in a wheelchair versus a person with autism that you would not know, how that often that invisibility actually plays a huge part.
I just want to add there that my daughter, Emma, is now a social worker, and that she has said to me that she became a social worker in part because of her migraine, because she wanted to help people who are suffering in invisible ways.
The film's so well researched. Where did that start for you? How did that, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, for me, this is really, for a word that's existed in my world, in my entire life, and so many people around me suffer from migraine, and now I've learned to say migraine. I've been good so far.
Yep.
The condition is migraine.
Yeah, yes. So there's a kind of a move to move the language from migraines, which are episodes of migraine, which is a neurological disease. So to shift it to the singular in order to express its real impact.
Got it now.
But that's ever changing, by the way. That the community, the activist community with migraine, is in the throes of looking at the vocabulary of this disease and how to reorient the way people see it by the way that they use vocabulary. So you're like on the cutting edge.
Yeah, well,
But that wasn't
I saw
your
not everybody in
question.
the film.
You were on another path.
I was talking about the actual research beyond the verbal research, and wanted to know, because this is really you've covered a lot. I'm sure you had to focus in very specific areas, but if you could tell us a little bit about the research process.
Well, so first of all, the film took a long time to make.
8 years.
Took 8 years. So we were following the trajectory of the research that was going on scientifically, and that was changing, as well as digging into the history. And I spent a week in London at the Wellcome Trust Library, which is like the most fantastic place probably I've ever been in terms of being able to put your hands on objects from the 14th century, that little medical diaries and stuff like that. So there was a lot of work in that regard in terms of looking for visual material to cover this, because again, it's invisible. So what are you filming, and how do you visualize it?
You did an amazing job. The use of animation and just in general, the footage that you had. I mean, everything that you mixed in there, from art to just other forms of footage, was really creative, and I'm sure took a lot of work.
Thank you. Yeah, it did. It definitely did.
I have two more questions before we open it to your questions. One, I would love to. The other thing that struck me in the film is, of course, the statements on gender, which I would love to hear if you want to extrapolate on that a little bit more.
Well, I mean, I think the film kind of says mostly what there is to say about it, which is stated so eloquently by Elizabeth Loder, which is that diseases of women tend to be taken less seriously than diseases of men, and it is also a disease of men, but more women have it than men. 75% of people who suffer are women, and therefore, I think also because the symptom, the headache, the idea of headache, the word does such a disservice to migraine, because it is, in our world, in our vocabulary, it kind of means an annoyance. But it's also been used for women, not tonight, I have a headache, and they sort of, there are a lot of symptoms like dizziness and ones that, as Joanna Kempner, the sociologist, talked about, were associated with hysteria, and so that contributes so much to the stigma of it too. Not only women's diseases not being taken as seriously in terms of research, but to be stigmatized. And God forbid a man should have something that might be associated with a woman, because it means he's weak. And this is still true now, even in the Me Too era, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
I think it was a very powerful statement, and hopefully will resonate beyond and actually change things
And
in
it
the way
really
we think.
impacts men. Just in the reverse of that is the fact that men also can't talk about this illness because they get
Dismissed.
disparaged or dismissed by their peers. So it's, and we've had people talk about that, and Andy Levy hits on it a little bit in the film.
And you made it, I mean, using NBA players as listen, men get this.
There are guys, yeah.
And they are men. My last question is, if there's one thing now, okay, we've been inspired by this film. This film has impacted us. What are your hopes that this film will do to the audience to do next?
Well, we hope that you will spread the word about it and get more people to see it. I mean, what we want this film to do is to help people who are suffering from this not feel so alone, not be so misunderstood, to try to destigmatize it, obviously to try to get more funding for research, but really to change the language around it, to kind of change the game and bring it out of the closet. And the more people who see it, the more that is going to be true. I mean, we've had so many people say, oh my God, you know, my husband saw this, and for the first time in our lives, he understands what I'm going through. Or a doctor, a headache specialist, actually, who doesn't suffer from migraine herself, who said to us after seeing the film, I understand for the first time what my patients are actually going through. So that's what's important, and you can talk about how you can do that.
Yeah, we're actually trying something that's fairly new because we are finding that people with migraine or people with migraine with their loved ones or their families or their colleagues, when they see the film in a group, in a theatrical setting, it actually has tremendous impact for them because they like appreciate the fact that because it's such an isolating illness, that suddenly they're in a group of people that get it. So we're rolling this out slowly by using something called theatrical on demand, where we're effectively crowdsourcing our audience. So if somebody wants to host a screening in their local area, anywhere in the country, they can do that with great ease. And it's all up on our website, which is outofmyheadfilm.com. But basically, all they have to do is sell tickets in the theater, and all the rest of it is organized like behind the scenes by this platform.
I mean, the theater sells the tickets. People just have to get an audience to sign
Yeah.
up for it and get them there.
To go buy a ticket on a website. So it's not difficult, it doesn't cost anything, and then they end up with a screening in their hometown. So we're really hoping to sort of get people really actively involved in helping people understand this disease in a new way.
It's fabulous, and it really creates community, and in a place where I think it's. How many people here suffer from migraine? Wow. Okay, created community, empathy, right there. We'd love to take some questions, comments, complaints from the audience.
First, I just want to say congratulations. I thought it was a beautiful
you.
film, and the graphics and everything Isaac just said, the graphics and the history and the visual experience of it, I thought was absolutely stunning. So thank you. I'm very curious, though, in your own research on it, that much of the focus was with the doctors and on the medication and on that science, and just a smidgen. And really, just the last 5 minutes or so, you dealt with food, and only one doctor talking about the gastroenterology of this. And I used to suffer from migraines. My own personal experience is that I've solved it with lifestyle and with dramatic changes in food, and I've not had a migraine since. So I kept waiting for that. And I'm just curious why just in the last minute.
Well, actually, at the beginning, it starts with the Dr. Dodick listing, foods can be triggered. I mean, it's kind of slightly peppered throughout, and then we do come back to Emma at the end describing her food triggers. So, it was a balance of, we felt like we mentioned it. We didn't want to hammer too hard on any one specific thing. We don't want to be prescriptive. I mean, we want to be informative without being prescriptive. So it was a matter of finding appropriate ways to raise a subject, like with Emma, bringing her story around to her food triggers was sort of our way of bringing that up. In terms of one doctor talking about the enterological aspect of it. He does, that actually is the biggest section we devote to any kind of research like that. And he does happen to be the cutting edge guy who is doing that research. So, so that was how we chose to address that aspect of it. I mean, there's, as you can see, there's so much to cover. I mean, we could have made a 10-hour film out of this. There's so much we had to leave out. And so, it's the process of documentary filmmaking. It's like, how do you keep the story moving and keep people emotionally engaged so they care enough about the people in it to absorb all of that other information?
I do want to say I thought you did a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful job of that. And so it's mostly my own personal experience because holistic remedies, acupuncture, and you do have the woman doing reflexology, yoga, these things that you definitely touched on, and lifestyle, food in particular, certainly it helped me tremendously. But
Yeah, the other thing is that, there's barometric pressure, there's hormones, there's food, there are many, there are probably, there's sleep, there's, regularity of your routine. There's so many different triggers. So that was the other thing we wanted to, make it quite clear, hopefully it came across, that it's really different for every single person. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
We have someone with a mic up there. I'm sorry.
sorry. Hi, I'm a chronic migraine sufferer, and I've been recently getting out of the every other day kind of migraine world. So I'm finally getting out of the worst of it. But I was inspired by so much of what was said during the film that I wish I was able to write it down. And I'm wondering, I know my sister's planning on doing a screening on the West Coast, but I'm just wondering if there's any way to get some of the words, I mean, I guess I won't be able to host a screening, but to get a transcript or some of the words of what was said, they were so inspirational that I'm just wondering, is there a way to get?
Well, what you should do is, if you go to our website, which is
Okay.
outofmyheadfilm.com.
Okay.
So it's easy to remember, if you can remember the title.
Okay, yeah.
And there's something called there's a stay in the loop on there, and you can like plug into our email and send us an email and remind us who you are, and then we'll help you.
I got it up there. One at a time with the mic. Okay.
Me?
Right over here. Yes. I'll take control.
I'm also a migraine sufferer. Luckily for me, it was when I was younger, kindergarten through maybe fifth grade. I know, especially we used to joke that Girl Scouts started it. It's too stressful, but on the clock, on the clock at 2 o'clock every Monday, I get a migraine, and I'd always vomit on the way home. And I actually just recently had a migraine, but it didn't freak me out. It had been years because I played tennis too long and missed a meal. And I was like, those are my triggers, dehydrated and hungry. But my migraines always involve vomiting. And you did mention that. And I was always surprised as a child. And then most recently, it's like vomiting sucks. But once you vomit, it's like, thank you, I'm alive again. So I was wondering if, through talking with any of the doctors or researchers, why there's so much relief if other people have had similar experiences after you vomit.
Well, I think they're figuring that out. I mean, that's part of Bob Shapiro's research on the brain and the gut. It's all a bit of a mystery still, exactly the mechanisms, but it's definitely that, connection. But no, we don't have an answer to that question, but you might, if you go on our website also, we have all sorts of, there's a resources tab you can click on, and you can find a huge list of organizations that deal with different aspects of migraine, and you might, find something yourself that's more specific to that.
Also, it's curious because some people, the vomiting is the beginning of the pain of the headache, and then they're like flattened for hours, if not days. So that's a unique, that's your thing.
And other people's, but not everybody's.
We're going to take one down here, and then we have this man up here.
Could I please ask Ms. Styron, if I may, what particular foods were determined to be migraine triggers for your daughter? And I'm not looking for any preventative dietary regimen. I'm just looking to find out possible foods that I could call to the attention of a neurologist when I meet with a neurologist.
Yeah, I think probably most neurologists. I mean, Emma's were pretty typical ones, which most neurologists would know, which are chocolate, red wine, cheese, artificial sweeteners. Those are her main food triggers. For some, I mean, it's different for different people, but those are pretty common ones.
But the strategy that most of the headache doctors use is to ask people to keep a diary and to literally track what you're eating, because what happens is there's a pattern that you start to see, and you can then you note down when you get your migraine, and you look at what you ate that day, and over a period of time you start to see a pattern, and you can start to sort of pick out which foods are the ones that might be triggering.
All the way in the back.
Hi, thank you. It was a beautiful film. It really hit me in the gut as someone who gets sporadic migraines. And I just want to say, you know, the artwork with the auras was beautiful. And I don't know if you intentionally wore a scarf that looks like my auras. I just want to say it's beautiful, but it reminds me of my
I saw
auras.
inside your brain, and I saw your auras, and I knew you were coming tonight, even though I don't know you, and I
That's
wore
it.
this for you.
I think that's it. So I wanted to get back to the thing about gender, and they briefly mentioned hormones. Are the hormone researchers looking into that? Are the migraine researchers looking into that? I guess specifically with women. You know, are they looking at the connection between hormones, cycles, menopause, et cetera, to look for any potential treatments or other things?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of research going on about all different aspects of it. It's just they don't have enough money to to do enough to get the answers fast enough. But I mean, yes, and we are not medical experts, which we really want to make clear and wanted to convey with the film. It's like we're not. We wanted to create a picture of a world around this subject and portraits of people suffering in ways that kind of convey a spectrum of what it can be, and that can convey to people who don't understand it what it's like, and to people who do have it that they're not alone. And so that was the trickiest thing about making the film, is like not getting into the weeds with specific, and again there's so much that, you know, it would have been 10 hours long.
Directors should be allowed to write prescriptions, you know? That should be...
Right.
Have enough experience. You could, like, you know, make a diagnosis here. We're going to take one last question up here, if that's okay.
Thanks for making the film. So I had just two quick questions. One is, so migraines have been a big part of my life. You know, my mother had them, my sisters had them. I'm a migraine sufferer. And I never, it was interesting, I never felt any stigma based on gender around migraines. And I never heard of anyone being hospitalized for a migraine, much less for a week. So, you know, one question is, there seems to be a wide spectrum. I mean, I'm a regular migraine sufferer, but I'm pretty functional. So I'm just wondering, do you have any insight into that? I mean, the millions of people who get, I'm just afraid that people who will see this will think, oh, millions of people are sort of hospitalized for a week with their migraines. And I think that that's, there's a wide spectrum. So how many people are sort of functional with migraines versus the people who really are laid up for a long time? And then separately, I'm just curious, exercise has also been a big factor, I thought, you know, in terms of endorphins, both triggering and helping with migraines. And that was something that wasn't mentioned in the film.
Well, it's sort of mentioned in the part where he describes, you know, the meditation and yoga and exercise, but we don't have a statistic for how many people go to the hospital, for how long. It's just, again, everybody's different. And I mean, I hope it doesn't give the impression that everybody gets hospitalized for a week. We were trying to actually show a very broad range of what it can be like.
We actually do have a statistic, I think. It's about 15% are chronic. Chronic is 15 days or more a month of headache. And 30 8 million plus people in America have migraine, so 15% of that are chronic sufferers. I think it's 12 to 15%.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that those people are going to the hospital for a week at a time. But that is a statistic that defines frequency.
In terms of numbers, I mean, the number's so big to begin with that it's still a very large number, but you are correct that there is a huge spectrum. And in fact, within the migraine community, they have found that there is stigma between the episodic migraineurs and the chronic migraineurs. Because the episodic migraineurs think the chronic migraineurs are whining too much. So, you know, it's the human condition.
We've been given one bonus question
You
over here.
want to ask? You've been trying to ask a question since the beginning.
Yeah, you got one right here.
There.
Yes, just first of all, like many people here, I was very impressed with the breadth and depth of your research and the way you presented it. And the thing that was most unknown to me, I'm luckily a relatively mild migraine sufferer, but my mother had them much more seriously. But I have suspected at times that there was some relationship, you know, not that I became nauseated when I got sick. I had a migraine, but that I always felt like there might be some relationship with other digestive issues that I have and a migraine. But your film was the first time that I had read, and my understanding is not that this doctor is saying, oh, what you eat will affect you, but that there's a relationship between colitis and other, irritable bowel syndrome and migraine. And now, is this a relatively new theory?
Yeah, this is the research that he's doing now, is making this connection between, is using the research of the gut-brain connection and the enteric nervous system as opposed to the central nervous system to understand more about migraine and its function. Because obviously, you know, if people are throwing up whenever they get a migraine, which many, many, many people, if not most, do, obviously there's some connection. And so this idea that these digestive diseases may be a form of migraine is definitely where his research is taking him right now.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there are two nervous systems in our bodies, and they're just starting to, like, focus on this one. I mean, in general, with neurology. So it's all happening at the same time.
So the website again is outofmyheadfilm.com. There's more to see there.
Oh, and there are cards. As you go out, if you want to get a card, that's Nancy. She's got the cards. Oh, sorry. They're on the table
On the table right outside.
which have all the stuff about doing the host a screening and have the website on it. So, and they're really pretty too, because they're from the from the poster. Yeah, take one. No, eventually you will be able to, but we really want to do this process of community screenings first, and then once we've done that, then we'll move towards, you know, digital streaming and DVDs and all that. We will get there, but we're going to maximize the other, getting people into a room together to watch it before we get to that. Yeah, that's what we're working on.
our
That's
goal.
one of our.
One
Then
of
we
our
have
goals.
the whole educational distribution aspect is another
Yeah.
part of it.
We would like
Yeah,
to we would
medical
like to
Folks, you'll be
get-
here to answer more questions. I think you know, you'll be here all night.
Yeah.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here.